It is possible that over 100,000 people died during the Peloponnesian War, including civilian deaths caused by a plague in Athens. The Greeks are one of the most well-known cultures in ancient history. They were a dynamic culture filled with political and cultural advancements. But ancient Greece was not a unified empire. Instead, ancient Greece was divided into many city-states, and each ruled independently. Still, the Greeks spread around the Mediterranean. There were a couple of major wars that permanently changed ancient Greece. One of those wars was the Peloponnesian War, fought between Athens and Sparta. Both city-states were powerful, and the war lasted for 27 years, changing the way the Greeks thought and the power structure of their civilization, showing how war can both teach and destroy the people it impacts. What started the Peloponnesian War? During the Greco-Persian Wars, the Greek city-states discovered they could better repulse Persian attacks if they worked together, so they began forming groups. In time, two significant groups emerged, the Delian League and the Peloponnesian League. Athens led the Delian League, whose main goals were fighting the Persians, defending their homes, and even splitting the spoils. Not all Greek city-states joined the Delian League. Only cities that wanted to continue fighting the Persians were part of the group. Although the Delian League began as a democratic institution, Athens soon developed ambitions of establishing its own empire and used the alliance to take power for itself. It used force to stop city-states who revolted against its regime or tried to leave the Delian League. Members had to contribute money to the league, which was delivered to Athens. It soon began using the funds for non-league-related expansions. However, Athens was not the only city-state that was gaining power. Sparta led the Peloponnesian League, which was actually older than the Delian League. The Peloponnesian League's goal was to defend its members and maintain control of Peloponnese, the southern part of Greece. Sparta formed the league to maintain its power, and all the city-states entered the Peloponnesian League with that in mind. If the other city-states chose to support Sparta in their military campaigns, they would send troops to assist. Although the leagues functioned differently, Athens and Sparta quickly became powerful, threatening to check each other's imperial ambitions. Athens began supporting Spartan enemies like Megara and Aegina, increasing tension between the two city-states. Athens' growing ambition was one of the root causes of the Peloponnesian War, but another cause was the differing interests between the two city-states. Spartans wanted the freedom to protect the lives they'd always had. They wanted to rule the Peloponnesus and have the Helots work the land in peace. Athens wanted the freedom to expand its empire, and it felt that anyone who was not under its control was a threat. Both city-states were responding to the recent Persian invasion. Sparta reacted defensively, and Athens responded offensively. Both saw the other as a threat. Before the Peloponnesian War, Athens and Sparta had a more minor fight that historians called the First Peloponnesian War. Around 460 BCE, the Helots in Sparta revolted. The Helots were the people who worked the land, but they were a mix between a serf and an enslaved person. Spartans called for their old allies to help put down the revolt, which still included Athens. Several city-states sent soldiers, but Sparta sent the Athenian soldiers away. Athens interpreted this as an underhanded declaration of war, and they declared war on Sparta. Although the war was mainly fought amongst their respective allies, Athens still managed to overextend themselves because they were fighting the Spartans and the Persians at the same time. Athens was forced to end their Persian conflicts in 449 BCE, and they signed the 30 Years' Peace with Sparta in 446 BCE. The 30 Years' Peace ended the First Peloponnesian War, giving all of Greece a much-needed breather. Both sides needed to maintain the peace. If war began brewing, either side could ask for arbitration to settle the matter and avoid another war. Sadly, the 30 Years' Peace barely lasted 15 years. By 431 BCE, the Peloponnesian War had begun. Both sides claimed the other had refused to participate in arbitration and claimed the other city-state had started the war. However, the war did not begin with Athenian or Spartan action. Instead, it started when Thebes, a member of the Peloponnesian League, attacked Plataea, an Athenian ally. The fight pulled Athens and Sparta into war, beginning the Peloponnesian War, and changing the course of ancient Greek history as almost every city-state had to pick a side. How did the war end? The Peloponnesian War lasted for 27 years, but ancient wars were not fought continually like modern wars. Instead, battles only happened during certain times of the year, and years could pass between sections of a war. The first 10 years of the war is called the Athenian War, and Sparta was mostly on the offensive while Athens defended. Even early on, both sides were evenly matched. Athens had a stronger navy, and Sparta had a stronger land army. This only increased and intensified the tension between the two city-states. Early in the Athenian War, Pericles, leader of Athens, encouraged all Athenians to move into the city. The city was protected by tall walls that stretched from Athens to its ports, Piraeus and Phaleron. Pericles did not want to engage the Spartans on land. He planned to attack Peloponnesian ports and keep his people safe inside Athens. Theoretically, they were even safe from a siege because their navy could supply all their needs via the ports. The Spartans immediately tested that theory by invading and destroying farms and houses outside the city walls. Although this did not impact the Athenians, they still had to deal with a disaster. In 430 BCE, a plague broke out in Athens, and historians estimate it killed 1/4 to 1/3 of the population. Athens was crowded before the Peloponnesian War, but when everyone crowded in to escape the Spartans, they overtaxed the sanitation system. Disease spread quickly, discouraging Athenian allies from offering support. Pericles, who had advocated for a defensive strategy, died from the plague. With his death, the Athenian focus on defense also faded, and the new leaders, such as Cleon, began pushing for a more offensive approach. However, directly engaging the Spartans proved futile quickly, and the Athenians soon realized they were not making significant progress in the war. Even though the Athenians won a significant victory at Pylos near Sparta, the Spartans retaliated by taking Amphipolis, threatening Athens' control of the area. When Athens arrived in 422 BCE to take the region back, the resulting battle killed Cleon and allowed a more moderate leader to come to power named Nicias. Nicias knew that the Athenian people were tired of war. The Spartans had been asking for peace for some time, but Cleon had been too ambitious to listen. Under Nicias, Athens agreed to peace, and the Peace of Nicias was supposed to mostly restore Greece to how it was before the war and establish peace for 50 years between Athens, Sparta, and their allies. However, the Peace of Nicias did not address the initial cause of the war, Athenian imperial expansion. Even after the treaty was signed, Athens continued to expand. They allied themselves with Argos, Sparta's enemy, and provoked Sparta into a battle. However, the Spartans won, which ended the Argos and Athenian alliance. The Athenians did not let this battle stop them, and they soon turned their attention to adding Melos and Sicily to their empire. They took Melos, but the Spartans heard of the Athenians' plan to attack Syracuse in Sicily and sent a small force to help defend the city. The Athenians attempted to take the city several times, but their efforts ended in complete defeat. The Athenians were weakening, and the last part of the Peloponnesian War seemed to spell out their doom. Historians call the last 9 years of the war the Ionian War or the Declian War. It was marked by increasing Spartan attacks on the Athenian lands. The Spartans even set up a base at Declia. The Spartans were determined to finally end the Peloponnesian War, so they launched a series of attacks on the Aegean Sea, the primary source of Athens' power and wealth. Earlier in the war, Athens would have had the wealth and allies to combat Spartan forces in the Aegean, but by this time, Athens was running out of money and demanding high tribute from their allies, which was only increasing tension. Even though the Spartans appeared to have an easy victory, they could not defeat the remaining Athenian fleet at the Battle of Cynossema in 411 BCE, which caused the war to drag on. Although the Spartans could not finish the Athenian fleet, Athens was unable to finish off the Spartan fleet as well. For several years, it appeared that the Peloponnesian War would fizzle out as a stalemate again, which frustrated the Athenians. The Spartans had been laying siege to Athens for so long that the Athenians were struggling with shortages. They were utterly reliant on trade with Piraeus. Spartan Admiral Lysander decided to capitalize on this. He lured the Athenian fleet away by attacking their grain supplier, and then attacked the fleet, destroying all but 12 ships. The Athenians had run out of luck. They had no money, no fleet, and no food. They finally surrendered in 404 BCE, bringing the Peloponnesian War to an end with a resounding Spartan victory. What were the impacts of the Peloponnesian War on Greece? The Peloponnesian War changed ancient Greece in many ways. One of the most immediate was the decline of Athens. Although Sparta did not destroy Athens, it would never be the superpower it was before the war began. Sparta's victory eventually opened Greece up to the Macedonians, who invaded under Philip and conquered almost all of Greece for the Macedonian Empire. Philip was the father of Alexander the Great, who took the imperial desires of his father even further, conquering much of the known world at the time. However, there were other consequences of the Peloponnesian War on Greek society, particularly in their culture. The war was reflected in Greek art during the time, but it wasn't always in the way we might expect. Before, the Greeks had focused on rationalism in art, but during the war, some artists began focusing more on the softness of the human form. Some historians believe they were using this to escape the turmoil and stress of war. Although sculptures tended towards softness, reliefs and carvings focused more on war anxiety. They explored the uncertainty of war and their desire for victory. The Greeks also shifted their view of death during the war. Death was no longer a tragedy. Instead, it was a part of life that must be dealt with. Ancient Greek literature also reflects these changing opinions about war, especially in their plays. Plays were the leading entertainment in Greece, so they often commented on contemporary societal issues. Many of these plays deal with war weariness, as the Greek people shifted away from war as a means of glory and began to see war as a violent and tragic event filled with waste. Of course, the war changed more than just the political dynamics of Greece and its culture. It also changed the philosophy of the ancient Greeks. One of the most famous Greek philosophers today, Socrates, lived and developed his teachings during the Peloponnesian War. Socrates was possibly born around 469 BCE, so he watched the tensions between Sparta and Athens grow into war. He even served as a soldier for Athens in the early part of the war. He also saw the end of the war and the trouble it caused in Athens as the people struggled to deal with losing. Between serving as a soldier and the end of the war, Socrates developed his philosophy, which focused on ethics and morality. He believed everyone should try to do good, even if death was inevitable, and he thought everyone should have access to the education they wanted. Socrates is credited with changing the course of Greek philosophy by bringing it out of the cosmos and into people. This was revolutionary, inspiring the people who came after him, like Plato and Aristotle. Unfortunately, his thinking also led to his execution because it endangered the power of the leaders at the time. However, this wasn't enough to stop his work from changing the world. The Peloponnesian War touched almost every aspect of Greek life, changing how the Greeks made art and thought about life. Their culture continues to impact us today, making the Peloponnesian War an integral part of modern life. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. I hope you found this video to be captivating. To learn more about the Peloponnesian War, check out our book, The Peloponnesian War, a captivating guide to the ancient Greek war between the two leading city-states in ancient Greece, Athens and Sparta. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.